on every website that shows the figure, and just, man, you got me to buy the rest of the line. Because I was like, okay, yeah. So I'm like, I'm gonna test the waters with Quicksilver, and then Quicksilver showed up, and I was like, okay, I'm in. You got me.
You get Monstar.
Yeah.
Well, but Quicksilver is a perfect example, though. You know, this is indicative of the larger thing, and you know, I don't want to sound like I'm just making tons of excuses, but Silverhawks was one of the most problematic lines that we ever made, simply because you know, we had a factory that we were using that we've used forever, that we still use, mostly for reaction, and it just wasn't coming together. And we spent a lot of time on the sculpts and the engineering, and a lot of time on paint. And we spent so much time on this elaborate paint that we could make that was being sourced in Vietnam. And then we just couldn't get the QC that we needed. So we ended up having to move the tools to a different factory and more or less start over. In doing so, though, that pushed us into more of the pandemic era, you know, the height of the pandemic. And the paint that we had developed for Quicksilver went from being affordable, expensive, but affordable, to 10x the price it was. So all of a sudden, this sort of iridescent, matte, swirly, kind of crazy color that you would hold and then turn it to the light and it would literally just go across it became impossible to use. And so then we had to spend a bunch of money to redo all the tools to make them work correctly. It's frustrating for me because I think that figure is beautiful and I don't want to downplay it, but I'm like, it's 95% of the way there. I see the 5% that's missing, and it drives me bananas. Where on something like the big Monstar,
yeah,
you know, I'm like, all right, that one came out the way we expected, but I feel like we didn't 100% nail it. I appreciate that you love it, but I didn't 100%.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine what the other 5% is now. Now that it's going to kill me.
Yeah, see, and that's the problem is now I've ruined it for you.
No. It's no.
But where I was trying to go with that is that, unfortunately, none of this stuff, as much as it sounds like it should be, is never a linear straight line. Like it should be, hey, we rendered it, you make a tool, you make a mold, you inject the plastic, you paint it, you ship it. How hard can it be?
Yeah.
It's like actually every step's going completely haywire.
Yeah.
At any given time. And things happen like Silverhawks Wave 2. This is going to drive me crazy. So for anybody that's got Silverhawks Wave 2, the palm, which is a third material, which is the joints.
Yeah.
So you've got your ABS torsos, you've got PVC for most of the arm, and then we have palm, which is a form of nylon that we use in the joints. And that nylon just makes it so that the friction, because those things are all friction fit, slide a little easier. You can't paint palm without it scraping off. But we inject the palm in the exact same color as the finished painted figure. Well, if you look at Silverhawks Wave 2, the factory, in its effort to make sure everything was perfect, painted over the top of the palm, which they don't need to do. But then you get it, you move the joints, the paint scrapes off the palm, and you're like, oh, the paint's scraping off this figure. This is crap. And it's like, well, if you look at Wave 1, none of the palm is painted.
Yeah.
And you'd never know the difference, and then it looks right. But then something happens, and I say something happens because technically you can actually enter China now, but we still can't really go to the factory. It's not. State Department still is like, you should probably not go to China.
Completely understand that.
We used to have somebody at the factory 2 weeks out of the month, every month, all the time. Constant rotation of somebody from us in the factory talking about the little things just to make sure that last little bit is done. Most importantly for expediency, to get things out faster. No, that's right. Make this change. Okay, got it. Boom, go.
Yeah.
Versus mail it to me. I make a comment, send it back, kind of thing. But those are the little things when you get into production. The factories are trying to make sure that it's perfect so that nobody comes back to them and asks for credit or a refund.
Yeah.
So Silverhawks 1 and Silverhawks 2 are at different factories. Silverhawks 2, they were like, oh, well, you're done. The figure is perfect. Somebody in there was like, well, we need to paint this part to make sure it's 100% a match. I don't want anybody saying no. And then we get it, and it's not on anything that we've ever had sampled. And then it shows up, and people are like, the paint's scraping. And I'm like, what do you mean the paint's scraping? There's no paint.
So is that
ultimately what? Actually, there is.
Yeah.
So these are the little. Those are the things that will kill you, because that guy that's paid $55 for that figure and is in love with it, and then it shows up and he moves the arm and the paint scrapes, it's just he's going to throw up his hands in the air. And I'm on a tangent, but that's the stuff.
No, you're good. This is good stuff. Is that ultimately what affected distribution between Wave 1 and Wave 2? Because there was a kind of a weird timing issue. I noticed like Wave 2 kind of hit.
Wave 2 came before Wave 1 because we had to move the tools, move the molds, and then start over at the new factory. Everybody's got different machines. Wow. So literally, the temperature they're melting the plastic at, the direction it's in, yes, in the mold, it's direction, the plastic is being injected at certain pots, but the tension, the speed, all that stuff changes how it's melted. If you've ever seen plastic where you get it, where you can see the swirl marks inside, all that stuff's being squirted in there and swirled and until it, cools. So you've got to readjust everything for every machine. It's not as simple as like you just move it over. So there's a lot of work that goes into just the little things, that the way I also describe it to some people sometimes when you're talking about joints, whether you got a tight joint or a loose joint, you're talking about something that's a tolerance of about 1/100 of an inch between it being snug, too snug, or not snug enough. And a lot of that literally is you at the factory going, turn up the temperature 5 degrees.
Yeah.
How fast is it going to shrink when it cools? How much isn't? One of those things. And that's really what so much of the time is spent doing, is all these little annoying things that you do to make the figures fit perfectly, because they're mathematically fine in the tool, but that doesn't mean they come out of the tool mathematically fine.
Yeah, the shrinkage of curing, I know, I can't imagine how much that must really cause you headaches.
Well, because it's different it'll be different for how big the piece is and how much mass it has. It'll shrink at a slightly different rate. It'll depend on which way it's oriented in the mold. So is it being shot and all the plastic coming down this way, like on an arm, or is the arm this way and it's coming out and going that way? The way that the melted plastic is flowing, almost like if you think about grain, is the way it's going to shrink. So all these little dumb things that you have to think about when making all this stuff it's mind-boggling sometimes.
Well then,
hey, all credit goes to Dustin for lining this up, not me. Sorry, that was a question.
I can't read and talk at the same time. So
No, you're fine. You're fine.
No, you're absolutely fine.
So
I don't take credit for other people's work. I don't.
Yeah. So, seeing as how much trouble Silverhawks gave you, there is a kind of a heartbreaker question I have to ask you, as far as licensing. People are kind of there's whispering.
People on the internet have nothing to do but talk about
exactly. And then the more you look at it, the more you're worried, and then that brings us to a certain character, Copper Kid.
Kid's coming.
Oh, I can't tell you how good that makes.
So you just
Copper Kid will be coming.
Copper Kid's coming.
Copper Kid is coming.
Will be what is Wave?
So
Wave 5 will be Copper Kid.
Wave
5 will be Copper Kid.
Wow.
Because maybe I'm getting ahead of myself and talking about shit I shouldn't.
No.
Wave 5.
No, you said it.
Wave 5 is Copper Kid and his space racer.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
So
Sort of like when we did Mandora and her electrocharger.
Yeah.
We're going to do Copper Kid and Space Racer because theoretically you might already have a Mirage, but you know.
Well, see, that's what I was curious about. What about Thundercats got the Thunder Tank? What about the Mirage? Is there any plans for that?
If we get far enough, yes, but we got to get a little further on, you know.
So because
vehicles are, especially big vehicles, take a lot of work. So there's only so many vehicles we can do at a time. Like we delivered Thunder Tank, we're finishing Party Wagon. After that goes, we have another vehicle that will come out at San Diego Comic-Con. It is not the Mirage.
Oh,
I'll just squash that right now. It's not the Mirage.
They're already
But
speculating in the
it's
comments.
something that people have been asking for a very, very long time. And then there's another vehicle after that. And did we? Yes. All right. Sorry. We'll talk. We can jump ahead to that here in a second. But there's a few other vehicles that we want to get to first, and then if that Silverhawks fan is still there, then I'd love to do the Mirage, but we're going to do Copper Kid and Space Racer first.
Good.
Cool.
Good. Thank you.
But wave 4 of Silverhawks, we're still trying to convince. I have samples from the factory that are fucking going to make people's brains melt, but the factory does not want to make them. So I am trying to convince the factory that they should make these. So I don't want to have to move it to yet another factory. So
okay. So before we get off the vehicle discussion, okay, Monstar, he wants his Skyrunner. Put that on the table, please.
all in time. Hopefully, let me rephrase that. Hopefully, all in time.
I can't even imagine constructing that.